I'm short. Okay. Apparently my camera was at the wrong angle. I didn't realize it. Anyway, guys, we're recording live today. I'm hoping you can hear me. It looks like there's volume getting louder when I get closer, or is it not getting louder when I get closer? Yeah, okay. Just making sure, because sometimes this goes through my computer audio instead of the microphone. So we're recording episode 356 today, all about winter. And I just got back from a long drive. Wow, see, I'm wearing granny glasses holders now. It's my new thing. Anyway, I just got back from driving to get the roaster. So today is my first day back in my office. Got onions behind me, as you can see. And we're going to get this show on the road. Winter is coming. So then I got to hit record. In order to hit record, I have to see that there's record. By the way, people on my YouTube live stream, if you have questions, all caps, please. All caps. All the caps. Please use all the caps. I like it when you use all the caps. So get this situated so if I talk straight into the mic, it gets lots of, you hear that sound? Not good. Not good. Okay. Here we go. Well, welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, October 19th, 2020. This is episode 356 of Living Free in Tennessee. And today, I have a reminder for you about winter. Winter is nigh. Winter is upon us. Winter is coming. Soon the plants will go to sleep. Bare root trees will beg you to please put them in the ground before it warms up. And we will have snow and winter weather. And we will have longer nights. And a lot of people like to take this time to reset themselves. Some of us live on a homestead, though. So with the cold here comes a need to keep my water from freezing, our animals from taking ill, and ourselves, all of us here, ready to be snowed in. And I think it looks a bit different on a homestead than it does in the city. So today I'm going to talk through what we're doing this year at the Holler Homestead to prepare for winter, because winter is coming. And, I saw the Fuzzy Wuzzy and it was all yellow or it was all black. I'm not sure anyway. And that means we're going to have a hard winter. That's the story you get every year, right? The whatever they're called. What are those little fruits called? The persimmons. They have a spade. That means lots of snow. Yeah, there's all those things. Last year, it was supposed to be a hard winter. It was not a hard winter. I actually think we may get it this year because we had a bit of a late freeze in the spring. We've had an earlier frost this year, and I think it's just given us the heads up. Well, I also have some announcements. Holler Neighbor live stream. We're going to do a bit of an update on the roastery expansion project. If I can, I'll give you a tour of the building and how far we've gotten by Thursday of this week. That is Thursday at 7 p.m. when it's starting to get dark, so it's harder to show you the roastery unless I have dudes following me with flashlights. But a couple of dudes live in the neighborhood who do have flashlights, so I might be able to do that. Also, episode 354, which was last Friday's or the Friday before last Thought of the Walk. It was on taxes and tax thuggery, and it got thugged. Apparently, I'm not sure what happened, but the episode itself has cut off partway through, and a couple of you let me know. I was on the road and not in a really good place to fix it. So tomorrow, episode 354 will come out a second time, and it will have the entire episode, I hope. I haven't actually dug into making sure I have those files, but I should have those files. I do back up my stuff as I go. And what I suspect happened is when I was uploading it to the podcast distribution network, it got interrupted halfway through. And so it's just I'm talking and then it ends. So that'll be up tomorrow. I'm going to let this podcast come out overnight before putting a second one out, just, so people maybe have a chance of having heard why in the world they got episode 200 or 356 and then get 354 again. Finally, if you want to send me feedback or stump the sauce questions, you can do it. Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com or go over to livingfreeintennessee.com. Click on contact and those emails come to me. And of course, if you are one of the people watching me record the podcast on YouTube, remember comments that you want me to actually see or questions go in all caps. With that, it's time for our first segment of the Monday show, Tales from the Prepper Pantry. It was really funny as I was writing this section for today. Winter is coming, and I was like, oh, this week the pantry's all about winter prep. And I started listing all the winter prep, and I was like, wait a minute, that's my show notes. So then I moved that to the bottom of the document, and here's what's up in the Prepper Pantry. And of course, for those of you new to the show, I talk weekly about what's up with the pantry because this is where we store what we eat and eat what we store, because you do not want to be in a situation where you have stored what you don't eat and have to eat stuff you don't like if you ever need it. And wintertime in particular, you're more likely, at least around here, if it snows, you don't go anywhere. I can go somewhere, but there's other people driving on the road who've never driven in the snow. And I don't drive in the snow much anymore since moving to Tennessee. So it's better just to stay out of danger. Like, don't do stupid things in stupid places with stupid people. Stupid would be being on the roads in Tennessee in an ice storm if you don't have to be. Because, people go way too fast. They slam on their brakes. They think all-wheel drive means you're invincible, and you are not. So the winter perspective in the pantry is that it's time to audit some things that we don't always look at. Like, do I have enough flu medication for the winter? Stuff like that. So right now, I'm going through different areas. For those of you on video, you'll see behind me, there's a box of onions. Yep, making sure we have enough root vegetable storage, stuff like that. Thinking about finishing up the rest of last year's meats that are in the freezer so that as we get things through hunting this winter, we can add them back to the freezer and there's room and we don't end up with the unfortunate, venison steak in the lower right-hand corner that never got eaten. We are shifting from a put it up standpoint to a use it up standpoint. So in the spring, we start putting things away for winter. And in order to support that, I bring out all the canning stuff. I bring out different ways of preserving. I bring out fermentation jars. And then about this time every year, we go from putting everything up that's extra to using up the things we've put up. So now the canning stuff goes away. And I'm still using the food dehydrator, so that stays out. But I'm also, later this week making green beans as a side dish. I'll be using that from the pantry rather than fresh. We've gotten into that time of year. So I've moved the canning stuff out of the kitchen. I have not stowed it away in the prepper pantry yet because we're in the midst of all of that madness right now. I am still drying herbs. That's why I still need the dehydrator. And mushroom season has started. I found what I think was hen of the woods, except for it was the wrong color. I couldn't find a mushroom person to verify for me, so I did not eat it. But it looks just like it. It's yellow. And then I was doing research and I discovered there's a yellow variety. So I am seeking a local mushroom person who can help me with that. I have pictures of it. It's bloomed on this log every year for 3 years now. I'll probably put another log near it, just so that when that log's done breaking down, we have more yummy mushrooms. And it smells like it should be edible, but I don't like to take chances on wild mushrooms or other wild plants. A friend of mine mistook, she thought it was mulberry and it was pokeweed, and she ate it. And I don't know if she ate the berry or the leaves, but she ended up in the hospital. And for those of you who eat poke, you have to boil it 3 times and rinse it before you eat it. And that's the leaves. And you're not supposed to eat the berries. Although I have heard that the berries are, like just one is good to help with arthritis, but it is a poison, right? And so, you want to make sure you really know what you're eating. So mushroom season is there. I dry excess mushrooms that we can't eat here as we find them, but the oysters are out. And it's time to harvest them. I've seen hen and chicken of the woods found by a couple people locally here. So it is prime mushrooming season in Tennessee, and I love it. It also means it's time for me to hike. I usually walk the dogs on the road, and it's time for me to get off the road and start hiking up in the woods because it's, chiggers aren't as active, ticks aren't as active. The snakes are kind of like, screw you, man, I'm going to go into my hole for the winter. And that's what happens. It's the best time of year for hiking now into the winter in the area. Next up, we have Operation Independence. This is where we talk about building local, ongoing, stable revenue into our lives, as well as debt payoff. And I have been knocking out the rest of my debt as fast as I can. But one of the strategies I'm using right now is socking away cash. So with all of the instability coming, well, I mean, it's upon us. Of all the instability we have right now, I think it's important to have some cash on hand. And I've been keeping more cash than usual in the safe, just so that if I need help and somebody doesn't want to deal with checks or whatever, I can pay them. Also, it's a really good way to trick myself into not using the checking account, because it's not in the checking account, it's locked in the safe. So I've been socking away cash as I can, and then every so often depositing it in my account and then using it to pay things down. Of course, I do have what I do, and it's sort of the Covey, I think it's the Covey method, where you have an emergency fund. I have $1,000 emergency fund in cash all the time, and that's for unexpected expenses. And I dive into it when I have one. I had one last month, so my $1,000 fund is down to $700, and so now I'm paying back into that with anything before I pay down debt again. But what I've been doing to pay down debt is paying myself first, so stuff into a savings account, and then getting it out in cash, and then over time, or if I sell something, putting that in the cash box. And when the cash box gets up to a certain amount, say $1,000, I'm like, okay, what am I putting $1,000 towards? That's in addition to the emergency fund. So that's been going pretty well. And I've, like my car sold for $2,000 more than I thought it would when I sold it, because I got a different car. And in general, like from a debt payoff standpoint, I have accelerated that process this year. And I will let you all know when I'm out of debt, but it is like I don't pay interest at this time on anything except for my mortgage. So what I've done is I've moved, because I had a lot of consumer debt, by the way. This is my problem. I made stupid decisions and ended up with a lot of consumer debt. And so one of the things I've done as I've sought to just get rid of that completely from my life and change my habits is when I knew I could handle it and not use the new card in an abusive way, I got a new card with a 0% finance and moved everything to it. Okay. And those usually last 12 months, 18 months, whatever. Did that. So you pay a fee for that. You pay interest to do it, like 3% usually, or 1.5%. I always look for the 1.5%. And then I make the minimum payment on that all the time. And then when I have extra, I put extra on it. So when I say I have $1,000 extra, it goes on that to pay all of that off. If I get to the end of the 18 months or whatever, I roll it to a different card. So the total interest you pay is less, because if you're getting 1.5% to move it, which is really the interest rate you're paying, you're not paying like 6, 8, 12, 15% on revolving debt. And so that's one thing. So that's one part. The other thing is the ongoing local revenue. It's all about the roaster expenses. So last week I left on Wednesday. Was it Wednesday? Tuesday. Must have been Tuesday. And went up to Kansas to get my new roaster. I got training on roasting while I was up there. It was really cool. And then loaded that puppy up and brought it back. My original plan to do this was to either fly up and rent a car and bring it down, because I needed an SUV to drive it because it's big, right? It wasn't going to fit in my Nissan Versa, even in boxes. And I looked at that and the timing of this is fall break. Well, oddly enough, coronavirus or no coronavirus, fall break, flights were really expensive and car rentals were really expensive, even if I rented one from here. So it was going to cost me like $600 to $1,000 to either fly and drive or just drive from here. Not counting like I needed a hotel when I was in Kansas and some other things. I pretty much just stayed at friends' houses on the way up and back, but I did need a hotel in remote Kansas where I was, so that I didn't have to, get up at a friend's house in Kansas and then drive 4 hours to where I was going and then do the training. And then, you see what I'm saying? Like that would be a lot in one day. So We got that all done. And because I've just bought a Nissan Xterra used car, it's all-wheel drive and it's an SUV. And it's way better for me because I can put bags of coffee in it. I can, it fits my roaster, all of those things. I decided, well, I've only really been driving this a week because when I got it, it needed a lot of repair and I had it gone over by a mechanic and then some repairs made. I thought it seems pretty stable. I'm just going to take a risk and drive this to Kansas and back, even though, because it's nice to own a car for a few months before you take it on that kind of a 2,000 or 3,000 mile road trip, which is what we just went on. And I thought, if it works in my favor, then that's just mileage write-off for me. And I get back and I didn't spend $1,000 on transportation. And if I get stranded somewhere, I'll end up spending $1,000 on transportation anyway, and blah, 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 right? I have AAA Premium Plus, so I can tow it pretty far. I can at least tow it to a friend's house. Because of this podcast, I have a lot of friends around the country. So went for it, and that worked out in my favor. I came back. The car did not have any issues at all. The only issue I have right now is the headlights. I'm not sure the adjustments keeping them up. And I'll be measuring that properly because it doesn't look to me like the screw that holds them up is messed up. So if that screw isn't, then and they're still falling down, then it's something else in the mechanics of how the headlights are. But other than that, like air conditioning worked the whole time. Cruise control was great. I borrowed Tactical's Bluetooth stereo speaker thing so I could have music and podcasts playing. It was actually quite comfortable. It was a lot more comfortable for a long road trip than my Versa. The seat was way more comfortable. And guys, it's not a premium thing. It's just, I guess, the angle of the seat. So it worked out really well. So that puts me ahead in that I didn't have to spend the money, right? This is an example of sometimes you spend the money because it makes more sense. It's a better ROI. And had I been stranded out there, it probably would have added a day or two to my trip. With a mechanical problem, but I was going to drive there anyway. I was putting the time in anyway. I would have maybe saved one day if I flew instead of drove because it's a 2-day drive versus a 1-day flight and then some driving, and came back with my roaster. So that's all going well. Okay. With that, it is time for the main topic of today's show. And that is Winter is Coming 2020 version. This is an episode I think I've done every year since the podcast came out. In fact, we're going to be doing some of the annual Winter is Coming sorts of podcasts all week this week. And it's because when you are living closer to the land, you are much more hyper aware of the seasons. And winter has a really big impact. I mean, summer is hot and all, and you got to protect your plants and your animals from, not getting enough water, basically, or getting too hot. But at the end of the day, I find the winter challenges to be much more difficult than the summer ones. And so I feel like the whole year we're preparing for winter, and then winter comes and it's gone, and it's time to prepare for winter again. So when we talk about it, usually we start our winter preparations in August. I mean, I've been doing it all year, but August I start getting earnest about how am I going to keep the pipes from freezing, and which animals are still going to be alive through the winter, and if so, stuff like that. So in August I do the episode, and I'm usually recording it in here with boiling my buns off because it's hot outside. And not this year. This year I'm sitting here in a flannel shirt with snuggie socks on to keep my feet warm. And the truth of the matter is cold temperatures have hit us already. We've had our first frost. They've hit us sooner than in previous years. I was going to say sooner than normal, but our official first frost date is October 15th, and it hit us on October 15th. So that would be par for the average right there. And par for the average. I'm feeling redundant today again. Anyway, it's kind of like I feel like I just got caught with my pants down because things are not in order for winter around here. So when we talk, I thought, well, I'll share that with you too, because usually I'm like, hey, this is easy homesteading. You just get ready for winter in August and you're fine. And then life happens and you didn't, and here we are, right? So the goal of my winter preparations are pretty simple. I want to make sure livestock is taken care of. I want to make sure we humans are taken care of, and livestock and pets, okay? I want to make sure that my water does not freeze, because when my water freezes, it's a lot more work, and it's work out in the cold with ice. And work out in the cold with ice is cold, and it makes your fingers hurt. And then the other goal of winter preparation that a lot of people don't think of is spring prep. So if I prepare now for planting in the spring is way easier. If I don't include that in my winter prep goals, then what happens, and has happened to me in the past, is I'm starting to work on my garden beds, and it's February, it's already time to plant stuff in them, right? If I prepare them for winter now, then all of the soil bacteria and the worms and all of that can be working for me instead of me doing that work. So those are my 4 goals of winter prep. And because I'm behind, I'm like, well, crumbs. And it's not like, guys, like it is every year where I just get my garlic in late. Like, nothing's ready right now. Nothing. I don't even have enough firewood. It's like literally cold, and I'm burning the firewood I do have, thinking we had 9 months to get this supply going, and we did nothing because we've been so busy on other things. It's not that we haven't been working. It's that we haven't been focused on winter. So this year, and I thought, as I was driving, so I was in a car for a long time, had a lot of time to think. I was like, what am I going to do about that? Because winter doesn't come any more slowly just because I didn't get my stuff together this summer. And so this year I decided, you know what I can do? I have to decide, okay, if something's important to you, you put time aside for it, right? So like if you have a family and they're important to you, you put aside time to have dinner with them, for example. You stop working, you go have dinner, and if you're on one of those deadlines, then you go back to work. And if you don't do that, what happens is you don't spend time with your family, and you end up divorced, and your kids don't know who you are, right? So winter is something that's important to put time aside for. And I thought, well, what I can do is choose a time period that becomes winter prep time every day until we're more caught up. And then because here in the holler, we have 4 neighbors who all live by each other, who all have similar needs. We do a lot of things like for firewood, for example. That's become a community thing. In fact, I hardly do any work for it. I stack it. Nighthawk cuts it and splits it, and Tactical helps, I think. And I use it. I don't know how I got that deal. Must be the good winter stews we cook here. Anyway. So, we all do different things, but we have some level of communal sharing, right? And so then I was like, well, I'll tell Tactical what's up. Like, I'm really worried about winter. I feel like we're not hitting the priorities. I could use help. Will you set aside the same time as me? Because what's really nice when you set aside time for something like winter prep, or I'm calling it winter is coming. The winter is coming hours every day. If it's something that, it's kind of hard to prioritize, like taxes, it's nice when somebody shares the pain with you. And I asked him to do it with me. So he agreed. So every day from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., we're doing the winter is coming blocked time until I feel like we're more caught up. And I have a comment on the YouTube live stream that's pretty funny. Sugar Creek Homestead is in the process of building a new bed right now as she listens to this. So that's kind of funny. So she is also doing, I think it's a she, you're a she, right? That also doing her winter prep in the garden, because garden's important. So when I attack preparing for winter, I do it in several categories. I think about heat separately from everything else. I think about livestock. I think about humans. I think about food storage, separate from livestock food. I think about the systems that we don't want to have broken down. And I think about gardens and getting ready for those. And then finally, And this is one we haven't talked about in the past, but it is something I do as winter prep, and that's winter festivities. Because you know what? Once we're done with all this work, we actually do get some downtime. And during downtime, you do fun things like, I don't know, smoke a venison ham or something, right? So I'm just going to talk through what we're doing here in the homestead as part of these topics. If I see any questions or comments on the YouTube live stream, I'll try to integrate them into the podcast. And first category, and it's the one I think of, most importantly going into winter, is heat. I do not like being cold. I really don't. It's part of why I heat with wood, because other kinds of heat are cold. Wood heat is warm. There's something psychological about seeing the flames, I think, in the wood stove, and it just makes you feel warm. It knocks back the humidity in the air, so you don't have that like Oregon gray, rainy chill just seeping into your bones. That's right. So for us here at the Holler Homestead, it's all about firewood right now. So right now, my wood stove needs firewood that's dry. It doesn't do well if I have some of that sketchy firewood that got rained on last week. No, it wants dry firewood. But when it has that, it heats very efficiently. And so it's all about getting firewood and organizing firewood for winter prep right now. So one part of getting firewood today, during our winter is coming block time, Tactical Redneck and I went to town and got some things, including firewood. And now there's a truckload of firewood that is not cut from around my land, right? It's cut from around here because you don't want to transport pests in the form of firewood from one place to another. But I pulled the I'm buying my rick of firewood ripcord, which I pull every October. It's my birthday present to myself, and my birthday is tomorrow. So I get to spend, the $65 on firewood for me, right? So that is gotten, and I'll be stacking that up under cover so that it's along the house where in the summertime we sit and have like summertime cocktails or whatever. That now becomes a stripe of firewood, and the table and the chairs move out a little bit, and then it stays protected from the rain. So that's the first thing. And as part of firewood organization, it's time to take out the canning kitchen area, and it's time to put in the firewood under that bar. So that'll come from yard firewood, which we have a couple of ricks in the yard that have been there. And then we also have wood that needs to be split. So from there, what we need to do is decide, are we buying more firewood this year? And I think a little piece of the rednecks feel a little bit of failure when they buy firewood rather than just get it. And there's plenty of firewood to get. So we're going to be organizing, days of needing to get firewood, split firewood, stack firewood, all of that things. But the other part of fire organization is making sure the chimney is safe. So all the chimneys in the holler need to be swept, looking at stove repairs, inspecting the stove, looking for gaps in case they need to be plugged up with wood stove caulking, which it's more like a putty, but the boxwood stove needs that sometime. And then that's fire heat, right? The next thing is the other heating systems. One, I heat with electrical if I can't do a fire. An example of this was after driving for more than 10 hours to get home. I came home and there were some things that needed to be handled in the house. I handled those for a couple hours and it was cold. And I didn't stop and start a fire. And so I just decided tonight I'm running an electric heater in my bedroom. I use the oil circulated kind. Those work pretty well. And so making sure those are all in order and not dusty, because if you turn that on and you're dusty, not good. It smells really bad. And then in addition to that, I have kerosene and propane heaters that we need to check on them, make sure we have fuel for them, make sure that they're in working order, fix anything like if we need a new wick in the kerosene heater, that's done. And then finally in the pump house, I have a rocket mass heater that's done in air quotes. The part of it that's not done in air quotes is that it could use more gravel for the mass. So I need to get more gravel in that to totally finish it out. And we are using that this year. So we've had a few fires in it, but we haven't really used it a bunch. Plus they disassembled it to get the building up my driveway. So we need to reassemble the chimney because we didn't want to hit the chimney at all. So that's one. that's heat, right? That's just one topic, guys. We're on a homestead. We have more topics than that. Livestock is next. Livestock's pretty easy. What I do at this time of year, and I've already taken the first step, is increase the amount of food storage we have. So we have 2 months of livestock food storage on hand, and I'll bring it up to 3. We just bumped it up to 2 months. So then we can just resupply every month 1 month's worth of food, but we have a backlog of 2 months. And that means that if we get snowed in, we're not wondering what the goat's going to eat, right? The other part of that, though, is that the goat eats hay. And so we need to travel across the state, get a round of hay, get it here, get it sheltered so it doesn't mold. And then that's what the goat will be eating. In addition to that, that is bedding. So the other thing about livestock is they need proper bedding. The ducks use pine shavings, the pig and the goat use straw or hay. With a round, so one big wheel of hay and one goat is way more hay. Like, we'll be using this as mulch in the gardens, except for that it has seed heads on it, and I'm not sure I want to do that to myself. But this roll of hay can be used for bedding, and as it gets colder, if you know you have a really cold night coming, you put fresh, dry hay, and the pig will just burrow down in it. Like, I have looked down in the pig pasture and can't see a pig. I can see a haystack. And then when I'm like, hey, I'm coming with food, pig, the haystack explodes and there's a pig. It's really kind of fun to watch that. I should get it on video sometime because it's hilarious. It's something that you'd see in a Looney Tunes cartoon of, a pig coming out of a haystack. And that's exactly what it looks like. So you want to make sure you have lots of dry bedding for your animals. What happens if you rely on a store like Tractor Supply or the Farmers Co-op for this is about midwinter, they run out and you're screwed. So you want to make sure you have everything you need for the whole winter ready to go. Also, an animal first aid audit is in order because they are going to hurt themselves and you want to be ready for that. And then animals drink water. Animals prefer not to lick ice. So need to look at what kind of antifreeze systems we need in place for the animal water. I usually throw a couple 2x4s in the goat bathtub so that it presses in on the wood and not out on the bathtub as much when it freezes. We had one year when that thing was frozen solid. What I do with the goats is I carry water to them in the winter if it's a prolonged freeze, and it's not ideal. So what I do know is that there is power available up there if we do it right, and we may be able to rig. We may still have time to rig a way to have a stock tank heater and a stock tank up there for water for the winter. The trick with the goat, guys, though, is that she can jump over the fence if she gets on the side of whatever her water's in. So one year I couldn't figure out why the goats were getting out and it was snowy because the bathtub is by the fence and the bathtub water was frozen solid. So they just jumped right up on the bathtub and right over the fence. So you see what I mean? Got to be careful about where we put goat water for the winter. But I'm thinking stock tank by the barn with some sort of a stock tank heater in it. And then for the ducks, I have, it's like a metal platform that plugs in and you can put a metal waterer on it, and just putting that in the duck coop area for water. And during the day, I usually, they have access to the creek, so they're fine, and they will drink out of the aquaponics system, right? So that's the watering antifreeze system. The last thing we need to do is make sure everybody has good shelter. So the goat barn's looking good, the duck coop's looking good, the pig coop is not looking good. The pig coop, you like what I'm calling it now? Yeah, the pig coop is, it's open to the air and needs to be better shelter. She was in a shelter we have down there. I believe she's outgrown it. So we need to look at making sure she has a way to get out of a rain. Now, a lot of people would tell me on that, don't worry about it, pigs are resilient. Well, I do worry about it. I don't like to treat my animals that way. So yeah, we'll be looking at what the pig shelter is going to look like. Okay, so that's 2 topics. I've already been talking like half an hour about getting ready for winter. Like, I could have been getting ready for winter, guys, for half an hour. Next thing is humans. What do we need to be ready for humans for the winter? This one's super easy. Again, audit the first aid. I do an annual audit of the first aid. I'm going to be looking for things like, is there Tylenol in there? Do we have Imodium? Do we have some sort of anti-flu symptom thing in case somebody gets a bad case of the flu? Do I have enough antihistamines? Do I have all of my herbal remedies ready to go? The answer to that one is no. I've still got some collecting of herbs to do. Do we have Band-Aids and bandages and a heating pad that works? All of that stuff. Just go through that. Make sure you have what you think you need for the winter. I don't like to stock up on tons of medications because I hardly ever use them, like maybe 2 Tylenol a year. So a bottle of Tylenol lasts me for a really flippin' long time, right? And the same goes for any of those other medications I mentioned. Your house might be different though. So think about that. And then I add winter preps to my pantry like milk. I usually get canned milk. I am going to look and see if I can get like the heavy whipping cream in boxes that are shelf stable at Trader Joe's this year. Don't know yet. Haven't figured that out. Next time my buddy asks me if I need anything from Trader Joe's, I'm going to ask her to see if those are there and how much they are. Because having heavy whipping cream when you're snowed in and can't get to the store and are not milking your goat, which we're not, it's really nice. So things like that. Just making sure you have, because what's likely to happen in winter, right? You're likely to get snowed in and the power might go out. Those are the two things. If the power goes out in winter, you're panicked a lot less about your freezers because it's frozen outside often when that happens. You just put it outside or, leave it in the freezer if your freezer's outside. So that's not a big fear, but certain luxuries. It's nice to be ready for luxuries in a situation like that. And hot cocoa is a thing that I like to make with milk or heavy whipping cream in a snowstorm. It's like really nice to sit there with your hands around the cup by the fire after you've been outside in the snow and drink the hot cocoa. And that's just not as good when you had to use water. I know a lot of people use water, but I'm all in on hot cocoa, man. If you're going to do it, use heavy whipping cream, heat it up, and add the powder or melt chocolate if you want to do it that way. It's so much better. It's got a richer flavor. I kind of want some now, and I'm keto, and I'm not supposed to have it. But yeah, that's why I like to stock milk. Plus, I like it in my coffee. And then I do a quick audit of just winter clothing and comfort. I call it, like, are my long underwear still in good order? Like, is all that stuff still fine? Usually I've done this in the spring too, so I've ordered things on sale. That's just the way it's like. I'm wearing a flannel shirt today I got from Duluth Traders because it was on sale, right? It's pink. I don't like pink, but I didn't feel like spending a bunch of money on a red one, so it's kind of close to red, and I decided it's my flannel shirt I'm wearing around the holler. It's going to last me one season and get worn out, and it was like a screaming $10 deal, so I was on that. Sometimes I do stuff like that. Anyway, but you want to make sure you have all your bedding and all that. For me, I'm a blanket hoarder, so like I just had a blanket graduate to the dog bed heaven in the sky. The blanket heaven is a dog bed at my house. What happens when I'm done with the blanket is it becomes a dog blanket, and then eventually it gets washed to death and it moves on to the dumpster or whatever. But yeah. I may not run out of blankets for the rest of my life at this point because we have so many blankets here. Anyway, so that's what I do for human comfort. And then the next thing is food storage. So there's a transition. I'm sitting in my office among boxes of onions. So I store onions through the winter in a root cellar. However, my root cellar is partially above ground, and without adding an air conditioner, it doesn't stay cool enough in the summer months. So I start getting onions and sweet potatoes and carrots and potatoes and all those things that would go in a root cellar in August and September when it's still hot outside. So I end up with boxes of them in my house in the cooler rooms, and I put the onions in my office and everything else in my bedroom so that the onions don't cause the other things to ripen faster. And then now it's cooling off. Now, because my root cellar is built into the ground, it actually radiates that 55 degree from the earth temperature. Now I can finally move the boxes of all the things from my house into the prepper pantry where it goes. And that makes me super happy because I don't know about you, but I don't love hanging out with boxes of onions. It's like, it just looks like clutter to me, but at the same time, I'd rather do it this way and have like really high quality onions than be dependent on going to the grocery store every week for 4 onions, right? So that's the big reset that's happening. And then of course in the kitchen, all the canning stuff leaves. And now under the bar in my kitchen, I have, potato, sweet potato, onions, squash, and whatever canned goods that are dried herbs and whatnot under there, where all that stuff went. So I always feel like I love canning, but there's also a sigh of relief as the cluttering part of canning gets out of my kitchen and I go back to, I just get to cook here. This is kind of fun. I mean, of course I'll be canning broth and things like that and soups in the winter, but that's a lot less space intensive, so to speak. So that's all done. And then of course, as you know, those of you who listen to the podcast on an ongoing sense, I've been canning and storing food all summer. So I just usually take a quick look at that and see if I think anything needs to be added. And of course, that goes back to, it supports the humans mostly. So that's food storage. The next thing we go through as part of winter is coming preparation is the systems report. We need to keep the systems up and running, right? If the electricity goes out, we know what we're doing. And that's cool. The problem I have here is the system that's most likely to be impacted in the winter is water. Water goes from my pump house underground up to my house through the attic because there is no crawl space with this house and the pipes that were buried into the ground under it broke. So now it's routed. It was like either we dig through the floor or we go through the attic. I decided attic. Well, the attic gets cold. It gets below freezing up there. So I got to make sure that doesn't freeze. In order for that not to freeze, we have a rocket mass heater in the pump house that I can fire up in theory for 4 hours and it will radiate for a while. And we'll be testing that like full bore this winter just to see how long it radiates. Can I do it once every day? Does it have to be once every other day? Can it be once every 3 days? Don't know yet till we try it, right? And that's how we keep the pipes from freezing there without using electricity, which is a big change. Now I can use electricity or kerosene down there and I leave it, there, a kerosene here, just in case the rocket mass heater doesn't work. And I actually have a question on YouTube about if there's an electric backup for the pump house. Yes, it's a generator, but I don't want to run a generator to heat it, right? I'd rather just run kerosene if it's just to keep the pipes from freezing. And then of course, if the electricity's out, I just use water once a day at that point. And then, so my goal at that point is to keep it from freezing down there. And, that's what we do in the pump house. If I run electric heaters down there, because electricity runs the pump, I have 2 pumps and the lights down there. If I add an electric heater and both pumps are going and the electric heater, the amperage pull for that is too much. So, what happens is we blow a breaker and then the water stops moving and there's no heat and then everything freezes. So I've moved to kerosene because it's not very expensive, and kerosene heaters can run, on a very low setting all night long and be fine. So the rocket mass heater, on the other hand, I just light a fire down there and in theory it will radiate out. That's actually why we put the rocket mass heater, because Sean Mills from Hack My Solar came out and did an energy audit, and one of the biggest energy sucks from it's annoying standpoint, and it takes time and effort and money, is keeping the pipes in the pump house from freezing just because of the way it was built. And that point of failure, if it fails there, then I can't drip, because I need to drip in my pipes on really cold nights. I can't drip up at the house and then the whole house freezes, and then I got a world of hurt, right? Of course, we have PEX in, so it can freeze, but I'd rather it didn't. And when I know it's going to be below zero, guys, I drain the whole systems up here. I drain all the water out just to be safe. And then I just have to keep the pump house warm. And we have the rocket mass heater, which is heated with wood now. So that's the biggest system I put the most thought into over the winter. The other thing I need to do related to water freezing is I have an outdoor shower, so that comes apart, and we need to blow air through the pipes so that that's all cleaned out. We have a solar water heater, same thing, that gets disconnected. Need to make sure that it's not going to freeze, so we're going to blow air through those pipes. We have an outdoor spigot that is sensitive to cold, so we'll turn that off in the attic and drain that all out for the winter. And we won't do that quite yet, but that's on the list, right? And then hoses, like you go around and you unscrew all the hoses and make sure that we have the yard hydrants, make sure those are in good working order, all of that. So the other systems that we need to do are making sure all of our gas operated things are ready for winter. And that's like the rototiller, the lawnmower, all of that stuff. There may be one more mow this year, and there's a lot of weed whacking to do. But other than that, that's all. And then finally, my drains. We redid the drains. It's not done yet. And the drains need to be finished and underground so that they do not freeze. Because if you're dripping and your drain freezes, the water comes back up and then you can't drip anymore. And then you have to turn the water off and then your pipes freeze. So it's kind of all related. Like the biggest problem, I think, on a homestead, like that was not built for actual cold temperatures, which a lot of stuff in Tennessee is not built that way. We always hear about freezing pipes when there's a freeze. It's the water systems, man. It's the fact that I want running water in my house. So that's probably the biggest effort is going to be on getting the water ready before it's too late to have the water ready. Okay, the next thing you look at as winter preparation are your gardens. It's time to get the beds ready, right? We've got somebody on the live chat who's already getting their bed ready, or their garden beds, not their bed. That sounded funny. But right now, if your garden is done and you're not doing, your fall garden's not still going, which some of you are, but a lot of times what happens is part of your gardens are ready for the reset. Well, we still got peppers coming on. The aquaponics system has Swiss chard and herbs and flowers, but our dirt garden is done because my fall garden and the dirt garden completely failed this year. So what we're doing to get ready for winter is turning off and draining the hydro system. The hydro system was what we put on front of the house with tomatoes and other things and strawberries. The strawberries need to be transplanted into the dirt for the winter and they'll just go dormant. And then that whole system needs to be drained because if it has water in it and it freezes, bum, 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 bum. Yeah, no, not good. Actually, that song is good, but not good for the hydro system. And then the aquaponics system needs to be winterized too. The way I have a sump area with fish in it, and I put a stock tank heater in that just keeps it above freezing, right? And it's goldfish, so they can be cold. And then I take the plants out of that to overwinter the aquatic plants. Then I have 2 wicking beds. A wicking bed is mostly dirt with water flowing through the bottom of it, and then it has weed barrier so the dirt doesn't get into the rock that's their lava rock, and then it wicks up as much moisture as the plants need. Well, for winter, what we don't want to have happen is that area where the water's flowing through freeze, turns into a giant block of ice, breaks all the pipes, and I got to redo the system. So what I do to the wicking beds is I turn off the water to them, and then I drain that whole area, and I just trust in the rainy Tennessee winters to water them, and I water them manually if I need to. And then we put in hoops and the ability to put on, I use shower curtains, but plastic over them to just extend the life of some of those crops. Now, the things that will overwinter all the way are going to be my sage always makes it. I've got garlic chives in there. I've got Swiss chard that always seems to make it. And right now I have 3 roses that I rooted that right now they're under jars. So, you take a cutting of a rose and you put it in root hormone and you put it in the ground, you cover it with a jar to keep the humidity level high for the leaves in there. And then it eventually develops roots. They all took this year. I found a wild rose I really liked. I took a cutting off of a neighbor's rose, and then I found a 3rd rose I really liked. So I have 3 different varieties, and they're all in there. 2 of them are vining. I don't remember which one's which. That's the fun part. So next spring, I'll be like, are you vining or are you not vining? So that'll be fun. I probably can tell by the way the cuttings are, because the cuttings from the vining one have 2 cuts instead of 1 cut, but we'll see. So those, I'll take the jars off, let them go dormant in the aquaponics system for the winter. And then in the spring, before they start putting on new leaves, transplant them to their final rose growing place on the side of my hill. So that's the aquaponics system. The other thing we'll do is, if we want to overwinter anything or plant winter crops up in the garden, we'll do row cover there. I don't think we're gonna. I think I might like throw some turnips up there and some radishes just as to get the soil ready, and then we'll eat them if we want to, some of them, just to get more fertility going up there. And then up top, we're planting our garlic and the fall bulbs for flowers, because I've been slowly increasing the number of flowers here because flowers make me happy. And then finally, we're going to be doing the mulch. So we'll cut everything to the ground. In the upper garden, there are perennials that can be cut back. And then, we just do our annual vegetables up there. Cut everything to the ground, get some worm food down, like probably some rabbit pellets or sweet feed. And then I'll do a layer of cardboard and a layer of mulch. I think that's what Tactical and I just discussed. So that what can happen all winter long is that the worms eat everything up. It blocks some of the weeds because we still got weed issues up there. And then come spring, we'll be ready to get our beds ready. And we're going to be doing more intensive soil gardening next year. That's getting the gardens ready. The last thing to get due before winter. And after you've heard me talk for a whole hour about this, you're probably like, oh my gosh, I don't want to ever be on a homestead as long as I live. Well, it's work. Don't get me wrong, it's work. Winter festivities. So usually by now I have done an episode on handmade gifts you can give people for your holidays, right? So it's time to start making the handmade gifts. It was time like a month ago, but whatever, we can still catch up. So I'll be doing that episode this week. But also, so getting ready to hand make gifts, starting any special foods that require extra time. And, foods that require extra time can be like, if you're going to soak vanilla beans in some vodka to make Kahlua, or you can actually do it with a whiskey base. It's pretty good. Or if you're going to start that fruit cake, it's about time to start thinking about starting that fruit cake. Or if you're going to do a special ferment, anything that you think a cured ham or something, time to start thinking, what's that going to look like? And I like to look at what's in the freezer already and say, okay, this is actually what we're eating at Thanksgiving, this turkey. Don't eat that turkey till Thanksgiving. So I'll put some things aside. Like I have a bunch of chestnuts that we're going to roast up for chestnut dressing at Thanksgiving, for example. So that's getting ready for winter festivities. And then I like to make sure, I'm looking around to make sure nobody can see me. I like to make sure I have a little toddy of some sort. I want a spirit that's special around the holidays. And I get to decide what that is, go find the bottle, buy it, and then hide it in the back corner of the liquor cabinet, and it will appear as if by magic around Christmas time. So I think I might do a port. A really nice port sounds really nice for Christmas. So I like to think about it now so that I'm not running around in December looking for that bottle of port, guys. And that's part of my winter is coming prep. And you've heard me verbally decide on this podcast what my special spirit will be. So look for that toast with the little glass of port come December. Anyway, there is so much to do when winter is coming, isn't there? Yeah, so much to do. And that's why I usually start in August, and not this year. This year I started kickstarthollowroast.com in August instead. And it took a good 6 weeks of time to get through that process. It just wasn't to be. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes you have a kid get sick that you had to take care of, or relative die, or a kid gets born but your sister's house and you need to go out there, and you just kind of miss starting. And the thing is, homesteads are pretty forgiving if you set them up right. Like me not starting this in August is not the end of the world. It just means that we're going to work a little harder for a few weeks, right? And despite all that, it'll get done. It always gets done. Some things might not get done, but all of the important things will get done. All I have to do is block time and make sure I'm hitting the priority one thing at a time. And that time will be gone. And pretty soon I'll be tucked in by the fire with my port in my hand, planning what's going in the spring gardens. And that's why we do this now, so we can have that downtime in the winter and not be fighting the cold. We'll be like embracing it at that point. Anyway, if you like the show and want to support me, you can do it in a couple ways. One, find us on social, man. Like, we've got a really great network, and they're on there talking and helping each other. The places that are most active right now are MeWe. Go to MeWe, look for Living Free in Tennessee, and go check out what they're saying in chat. The other one that's fairly active is the Facebook group, although it's not as active as it used to be. That's Living Free in Tennessee Coffee Break group. I have been asked to start a Telegram group, and until I have 2 people willing to moderate that, not going to do it. So if you're really into Telegram and want to have a big old Telegram chat for LFTN, guess you better reach out, because when there are 2 of you, we'll do it. I've only had 1 person say they're willing to, so we'll see. We do, though, have a Telegram channel. Living Free in Tennessee is on Telegram. And all that is me announcing when stuff comes out. I'm basically taking a tip from Jack, who does that. And you can just see, like, Holler Neighbor live stream is here. This show, right before I went live on YouTube, I put it on the Telegram channel, put it in the MeWe chat, so people who wanted to join in could, right? So that's some ways to help. The other way is to become a member over at livingfreeintennessee.com. And of course, if you like coffee and you hate shopping, go to hollerroast.com, grab coffee, it'll be delivered to your door. You don't have to even go to the store for it. With that, guys, go out and make it a good week. And when you hit stop on the recording of your podcast, you know what you do now? You save it, guys. Hey, guys, thanks for joining in on YouTube. I see that Naked Toes Quilting wants me to do an episode on my root cellar with a how-to. Yes, I'll be happy to do that. My root cellar I didn't build, though. So do you mean building or how to manage stuff in your root cellar? If I was going to build one, I can tell you what I do differently than how mine is. I'm using an existing part of the property to function as a root cellar because it's built into the ground. So that's kind of where I am with the root cellar. Oh, how to manage it? Yeah, I'll talk about that. Like, the onions behind me, there are 4 boxes here. There's like more onions there. The onions are playing the keyboard in my studio. Those have been here for a while, and I go through them once a week and look soft, and those go into my kitchen and I use them. So if you're gonna have root vegetables in your root cellar, there's a weekly maintenance that if you don't do it, stuff will go bad. It's not the end of the world, but if you do it, you get a lot more bang for the buck. Bang for the buck. Somebody heard I wanted to buy a cow and they were wrong. I don't want to buy a cow. Yeah. We don't have room for a cow here. It's only 3 acres. Like, I don't want muddy. It's just not, it's not 3 like flat pastured acres. It's 3 ridiculous like hilly acres. And let's see, my biggest concern with homesteading is the inability to leave on sudden notice or vacation without financial assistance for others. That's the thing about a homestead. If you're going to have livestock, somebody needs to care for your livestock. I've got a good set of neighbors now that help me VR, and that's a big difference. And then we've systematically setting things up so it's easier to care for the animals than it used to be. In the winter, though, like, I missed Christmas with my family last year because I have to have somebody here who's staying here to be gone, and everybody else is with their family on Christmas, so I can't leave unless I have somebody here, because I can't trust that stuff won't break down. Yeah, I can't. If we just one -5-degree night, anybody but me here is a problem. Tactical probably can do it. Nighthawk can probably do it. But if it's going to be that cold, even my best house sitter, Brian, he would figure something out, but there are a lot of protocols. And part of getting the rocket mass heater in And we are actually in the process of, like on the long-term to-do list is heat tape in the attic. Yeah. Part of that is so that if I go out of town, it's not like, oh, you didn't drip. Now everything in my house is frozen. Oh, you let the fire go out. Wah, 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 wah. So, yeah. Paul said something to me. Maybe Paul wants a cow. That might be. He has been interested in cows for a while. And we have somewhere where we could use a neighbor's pasture. We got to redo the fences. Sugar Creek, you're willing to help too. We'll have a 3-way with my friend at School Bell and see what we can do for Telegram. Because that's the thing about new groups for me in social is I'm actually spending a little less time on social because it was making me frustrated with people and I had to back off for a minute. And I'm pretty sure that through the election, I'm going to be on social less because there's just a lot of angry people out there. I don't need to be around angry people, So anyway, thanks for joining the live stream. And what's behind the small door under the window? That's a big mystery. That's actually a tunnel. I think I showed it. I don't want to move my bass guitar right now, but that's, there's a tunnel behind my house. My house is built into the ground. And the only access to that tunnel was through the root cellar originally. And I added this door so that if we have a tornado, I can get into that tunnel because that's going to be the best place to be. So right now there's a bass guitar in front of it that would get summarily tossed aside. And I'd be a little sad because I like my bass guitar. But there's no electric wiring. There used to be some plumbing there, but most of the plumbing is under the floor in the ground here from the original house. And they used to heat with hot water in the floor. So that all broke. I'm sure it made a huge mess. But now we have the plumbing through the attic. So it's just a tunnel where it gets pretty mildewy in there. So I could age wine in it or cheese, but I need to deal with a moisture issue there before I do that. Anyway, thanks for joining the live stream, guys. I'm going to end it here and get this podcast out. I have 5 minutes to do it, which means we'll see in 5 minutes. My dogs have an appointment with me to take a walk because when you want to do important things, you build them into your life, right? Talk to you later.